Morning, class 12. Today we're going to continue with your circumstances that led to the JP movement. Yesterday we had discussed, the Bihar Chhatra Sangharsha movement that started in Bihar, and that's how JP gains popularity and becomes a very important social figure. Now, simultaneously, there were other things that were brewing up, okay, and helped in JP coming to the forefront. So one such event was your railway worker strikes that took place on 8th of May, okay, till 27th of May 1974. And what was the reason for this worker strike? It was basically a low wages, harsh working conditions. Now, the wages that was paid to the the railway employees were very much low, and they had harsh working, continuous and long hours of work. Basically, they had to serve for 48 hours to 78 hours, and there were no, loco pilot, just one pilot, okay, or one driver of the railway, okay, and he had to drive for 48 hours to 78 hours, and that was really a tedious work, where normally in a normal situation we have only 8 hours of work. So that was the condition of the railway employees, and then this becomes a very historical strike. And this period, 1975, is also known as the era of strike because there were many strikes that were taking place. But this one becomes a very historical one because 70% of the railway workers participated in this movement. And because of this, the railways were very much crippled. Okay, now Indira Gandhi was not a person who's going to keep quiet and just have come negotiations and table talks. She never did that. Instead, the strike was brutally suppressed by Indira Gandhi, with thousands of the railway employees. They were sent to jail, and then most of them had to lose their jobs as well. So one such prominent leader, okay, was George Fernandez, who was a union leader, and he was also put behind the bars. So that was why it becomes a very important historical event, okay, or the era of strike, 1975. Next one we have is the Raj Narayan case verdict in Allahabad High Court, and this is also an important incident that takes place. And here, why? Because Raj Narayan, who was the opposition, okay, of Mrs. Indira Gandhi when he contested election and from the UP constituency. So he had been defeated. That is the MP, okay, vote. Okay, so he had been defeated in this parliamentary election in 1971 by Indira Gandhi. So what does he do now? He lodges a case, okay, against Mrs. Indira Gandhi in the Allahabad High Court, and giving her the charges of election fraud and use of the state machinery for election purpose against her in the Allahabad High Court. Now, election fraud, okay, that is bribing the people, okay, giving them money, okay, for the vote. And the use of state machinery is all the government officials and the police officials were used in making the dais, okay, and to make for her, to work for her in the election campaigning. And also using the electricity free for free that was used for her election purpose. So that was the case that was lodged by your Raj Narayan, and the verdict of the Allahabad High Court also is a turning point, 12th June 1975, because the turning point for Mrs. Indira Gandhi, because the court did find her guilty on the charge of misuse of government machinery. That means she did use the government officials, the police, for the election campaign, but serious charges such as bribing voters and election malpractices were dropped. That was not there. But then she was held responsible for misusing the government machinery, and she did use them for the election campaign, and she was found guilty on charges such as using the state police. Now, on this, the court declares her election null and void. Okay, that means she now is no more the member of the parliament. Okay, she's no more the NP. Now she had to give her seat, so she was unseated, okay, from a seat in the Lok Sabha, and banned her from contesting elections for additional 6 years. She was not given the permission, to take part in the election for the 6 years for not contesting elections, and she had to unseat herself from the post. Now, what happens here is Indira Gandhi challenges the High Court's decision, and then she takes that to the Supreme Court. So now, 24th of June, 1975, Supreme Court again upheld, as I said, the court declared her election null and void. Okay, that was in the High Court, that was declared, and she has unseated her from a seat in Lok Sabha, banned her from contesting elections for additional 6 years. But Indira Gandhi challenged the High Court's decision in the Supreme Court. So 24th June 1975, Supreme Court upheld the High Court. Okay, the charges that was and the verdict that was declared by the High Court that was honored, and judgment and ordered all privileges Gandhi received as an MP to be stopped. Okay, so that had to be there because she had to be unseated from the seat. Okay, as an MP from the Lok Sabha, she had to be removed. Okay, and that she was debarred from voting. So that was what your Supreme Court also, upheld the High Court judgment. But however, she was allowed to continue as Prime Minister. That had to be done. Okay, but not the member of the Lok Sabha. Actually, automatically it happens that okay, you are the member of the Lok Sabha, because before becoming the taking the post of a Prime Minister, you have to form the majority, and then you are first the MP, okay, the member of the Parliament, okay, and then you contest for the election of the for the Prime Minister. But here, because since now everything would have been would have go for a hayway, so then she was debarred from voting, and then said that she had to be unseated from the post of your MP. But then she was given okay the permission to continue as a Prime Minister of India, because after only till the detailed hearing to be received, and then she had to resign from the prime ministership. That was what it was said. Now, after this, it takes a U-turn where Mrs. Indira Gandhi, in order to have her her seat to have her what do you say, her seat reserved, okay, or to have a hold over the politics, okay, she takes a very ardent role, and she takes a very a kind of turns into a dictator. How? Okay, by forming a mini constitution, and that is how she declares the emergency, okay, taking advice from her son Sanjay Gandhi, who was there, okay, and actually basically he was the one who was who held the reign of the politics at that time, Sanjay Gandhi, and the other closest advisor. So now 25th June, this is again another important event that makes Mrs. Indira Gandhi go to in a state of shock, and she also finds that okay, now her seat is in danger, and she feels that she has to keep her hold in politics. So now otherwise she would no more okay be the part of the Indian politics. So 25th June 1975, JP Jayaprakash Narayana, he organizes a large rally at Delhi, where he said that the police must reject orders of the government if the orders is unethical. Now it is also given in the code of conduct for the police, okay. If anything means like they don't just blindfoldedly okay move into the path, or just say yes to whatever the official, okay, the high authority tells them to do. If something's unethical, okay, in not moral, okay, not abiding okay to the moral values, then of course they can reject the orders of the government, okay. Now such an order that was given by such an order given by JP, okay, of course it incited the people, and that was a kind of giving a call, a clarion call of rebellion in the country, and that was what Mrs. Gandhi feared for. So she said it is unethical, as Mahatma Gandhi's also motto during the freedom struggle that was there. Okay, when JP said it is immoral and unethical, okay, with what the government says, you don't want to do it, please do not do it. You do not have to, follow what the government is saying if it's unethical. And also it is there mentioned in your code conduct rules also, okay, for the police. If it's unethical, you do not. So such a statement that was taken as a sign of inciting your rebellion in the country. Okay, so now Mrs. Gandhi now saw this as a kind of there's a kind of a law, and how she found it very difficult now to maintain the law and order. Now it became all dismantled for her suddenly. So then Sanjay Gandhi, who had the reign of the politics now in his hand, and he now asks his mother, okay, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and some of the close advisor also, assisted Mrs. Indira Gandhi and advised her that now she has to have a hold now in the Indian politics. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for her, okay, to continue as the Prime Minister, okay, and therefore you have the very important historical incident again that takes place in India, and that is the declaration of emergency. And children, being the student of political science, you have to know, and must be knowing what an emergency are. There are three types of emergencies, okay, and when the emergency can be called, and it is the presidential rule, okay, that is actually called that as ruled by a decree or an ordinance, okay. But then until and unless it is given by written, okay, by the Prime Minister and with the consent of the cabinet ministers, okay, emergency cannot be declared. Okay, but Mrs. Indira Gandhi, without even consulting the cabinet, okay, ministry, she just declared the emergency, and she forced Fakhruddin Ali, okay, who was then the president of India, to introduce the emergency. So emergency was proclaimed here, and as soon as the emergency was proclaimed, okay, you have your JP being arrested, then he was put in jail, and many other leaders were also, like Vajpayee. Okay, so it was kind of the one, she became a dictator, like kind of a Stalin. Okay, how Stalin had done with Stalin purges, so she started doing that, okay, with this, starting her arrest of all the important leaders like JP, Moraji, Advani, Ashoka Mehta, Vajpayee. All of these were arrested, okay, with the proclamation of emergency in the midnight, okay, of 12th of midnight, June, that is 25th June 1975. Okay, so you have another important newspaper that's called the Indian Herald, and many other newspapers, of course, has this, had the news of, Mrs. Gandhi proclaiming the emergency, and this is her son, Sanjay Gandhi, by her side. Okay, so now, what was the main reason for her to proclaim the emergency? It was because to preserve her seat and to hold on to the reign, okay, the political reign, okay, and not to be out from the political arena. That was her main aim. But she had to give reasons as why she, announced or proclaimed this emergency, and the reasons what she gave for proclamation of emergency officially. What she said was due to the war, okay, and if there's any internal threat, and that was what JP sought to be an internal threat, internal disturbances. Okay, so because of that one, and of course due to the war condition 1971, just the Indo-Pak war, okay, and the additional challenges of drought that was there, okay, because of the drought, the economic crisis was very much in a bad condition, and the oil crisis which they had in 1973 was also very, because of that also the economy was very much affected. So because of this, all these problems, okay, she is declaring an emergency. And the government also claimed that the strikes and protests that was going on had completely paralyzed the government and hurt the economy of the country greatly, and there is an imminent danger. So according to the article 352 of the constitution, okay, there's an imminent, so then that emergency can be proclaimed. There's an imminent danger to the security of India being threatened by your internal disturbances, and by internal disturbances she meant, okay, of all the JP movement, okay, that was how people were getting incited by all that. Okay, so now because of this, she now proclaims an emergency. Now, she asks your President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, as I said, who was then the president, declared a state of internal emergency upon the PM's advice on the night of 25th June 1975, midnight, and this gave Mrs. Gandhi to rule by a decree. Decree, that is an ordinance, a law, okay, and that is how, and she created her mini constitution of her own with the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act. She had done, and she took away all the fundamental rights of the people, okay, the Article 20 and Article 21, basically the freedom of speech, expression, everything was censored, so that was all taken away. Now she completely bypassed the parliament, okay, and she did not consult your the cabinet ministers, and not any one of it, and she took her decision on her own, and now she started to rule by a decree or a law making power. There's an ordinance, because she asked president to issue an ordinance directly, the law making power, and that was in times of emergency that was to given, and she took that all in her hand, okay, and that's how she declared an emergency and becomes a dictator for the next 21 months. And this is the very dark period, okay, you can say, in the history of India. Okay, now what were the harsh measures of emergency? You can see the harsh measures, of course, that people had to face. She rewrote the laws and numerous ordinances, and that according to the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act, as I said, and she made a mini constitution of her own. She subverted the judiciary, okay, that means not, she did not listen to the judiciary, okay, she made her own laws. And the crackdown and arrest of almost all the opposition leaders, as we already saw in the Indian Herald, okay, the newspaper then, who were the leaders and main leaders, they were all arrested and put behind the bars. And she also had the firing on the slum dwellers in Delhi. Okay, there were no slum at that time. She had all the slum dwellers taken away. Then forced sterilization. Okay, that is all family planning that was done by her son, to control the population of India. Then be it a boy of 17 years old or a old man of 70 70 years, okay, they were all taken and to the hospitals, and forced sterilization was done, and they were tortured on political detainees, okay, all those ones, and all the press was censored. Nothing could be spoken against the government. Okay, it totally became like your Stalin's rule, okay, as dictator. All the purges that was done on the people in Russia, the same thing she did in India. And all the fundamental rights that suspended, Article 20 and 21, which is the fundamental right of people, free, the freedom to speak, the freedom to express, all these were taken away from the people. Okay, so these were the harsh measures of the emergency. And one very important impact we see is, of course, is your Janata government coming into power, with the four opposition parties becoming very strong, and that is the Congress O, Jan Sangh, Bharatiya Lok Dal, and Socialist Party coming together and contesting election in 1977. Okay, we have here, because because the emergency was revoked after the period of 20 months, okay, of this harsh rule. With the emergency was revoked in March 1977, okay, under international and national pressure. Okay, she had to revoke the emergency, and then fresh elections were called in 1977, and that's how we have your Janata government coming into power. And that was the first non-Congress government that came into power in the history of the Indian politics. Okay, children, so I stop here today. Now I want you all to go through this video, and then please make a note of all the explanation I have done, and then I'll come the next day with your formation of the Janata Party. Thank you, children.